Hi friends! Welcome to this short bonus video showing you how to apply the sketch filter in Photoshop. So the first thing we're going to do is start with a new document. I am just sizing it at 8.5 by 11, so it's just the size of my printer paper. Once we have that, I'm just clicking and dragging over the photo that I want to use to apply the sketch filter to. This is not a good photo to do this because it has a really detailed background. But with any photo, you're going to want to separate the subject from the background. So the first thing we do is go to the Object Selection tool and we just click and drag around our subject. Don't worry if you're grabbing part of your background, we can edit it out in just a minute. To edit it out, you click at the top where there's the little brush with the minus symbol, and you can zoom in here and you can click any parts that shouldn't be part of your subject. So for me, it's that big ornament that's right behind my head. There's a better way to do this for hair that's a little more precise, but because we're going for a sketch filter that's a little bit more messy, it doesn't really matter here. So scrolling down to, for this, this is the only picture really that I had of me shopping, and it's having kind of a hard time identifying the background because I'm standing next to something that has a print on it. But I'm just kind of tracing around it very carefully to just isolate that shopping bag. So once you have your subject fully isolated, the next step is to get that subject in its own layer and delete the background. So the quickest way to do this is Command J on a Mac or Control Shift J on a PC, or you can right click and click Layer via Copy. A new layer will appear and then you can hide the original photo to see that you have successfully isolated your subject. So you don't need the other two layers now. So I'm going to click on that and click Delete. Click on the background, unlock it, and then click Delete. So I'm going to rename this layer. I'm going to call it Base, and I'm going to make a couple copies of it, but before I do that, I want to erase a couple of the pieces that I grabbed from the background. So I'm just going to grab the eraser tool here, and it would have been easier if I'd left the white so you can see it, but you just erase the parts of the background that you may have accidentally grabbed. Now you want to make two copies of this layer. So my first copy of it is going to be called the Inversion Layer. You'll see why in a second. And then I'm going to make another copy of it that I'm going to call the Sketch Filter Layer. Right now they are all three identical. So let's start by hiding the Sketch Filter Layer by clicking the little eyeball to the left of the layer. Click on the Inversion Layer. Right click on it and we're going to make it a smart object. Then we are going to invert the colors by going up to the Image tab at the top of the page and clicking Adjustments and going down to Invert. Go over to the Blending mode on the Layers tab and you're going to scroll down to Color Dodge. Your image is going to disappear, but don't worry, it'll come back. Then we go back up to Filter, select Blur, and go to Gaussian Blur. So you can already see that it kind of creates this like pencil sketch, and then there's a sliding tab going from sketch-like to very detailed, and you kind of just pick what's right for your image. For me, it was about 28 pixels. So then you're going to go back down here and you're going to add a new layer in order to take the color away. So click this little new adjustment layer icon and scroll down to black and white. This is going to create an adjustment layer that's going to turn your image into a black and white sketch rather than a colored sketch. So that's going to bring up all of these color sliders that you can mess around with to change the image to get the effect that you want. The other adjustment that you can make is brightness and contrast, and you can just play around with that to see how dark of strokes or how much contrast you want in your image. So you could easily stop there. That's a great pencil sketch. But if you want to be extra, and who doesn't, you can make it even more sketch-like by following this next step. So select the Sketch Filter Layer, and the first thing we want to do is desaturate the image, make it black and white. So you go to Image, Adjustments, and then click Desaturate. Next, you want to double check that the colors selected are black in the foreground and white in the background. Then you go up to Filter, click Filter Gallery, and then there are two options. You can either use the graphic pen filter or you can use the charcoal filter. Both will give you a really cool hand-drawn effect. I chose to use the charcoal filter. You can play with these sliders to make it darker and to change the strokes a little bit. When you have it the way you like it, click OK and go down to the blending mode and click multiply. Then go over to the opacity and make it a little more transparent. I would say somewhere in the 50s to 60s is about the right stroke you want, but play around with it and see what you like. Once you're done, you can hide that sketch filter layer to see what it did to the image. So that's it without it, and that's it with it. It just adds a little bit more of like the hand-drawn effect. So that's it. So now it's time to export these two images so we can print them. So go up to File, click Export. You want to export this as a PNG file so that it has a transparent background. And I'm just saving it to my desktop so I can grab it very easily in just a moment. Now you want to export the color layer. So you're going to hide all of the layers except for the base layer. Then you're going to right click and click Export As. You're also going to export it as a PNG so it has a transparent background and save it to your desktop or somewhere you can grab it really easily. So the next step is to start a new document, just an 8.5 by 11 document, and you're going to click and drag both your color and your sketch layer onto it. So the first thing I wanted to do is to make sure that these two images were exactly the same size. At this point, it doesn't even matter what size they are as long as they are identical. So click and drag the sketch layer on top of the color photo layer. Change the opacity down to about 70 so you can kind of see both layers. And then I just sort of finagled with it, pulling it a little bigger, using the arrow keys to nudge it up and down to make sure that those two images lined up exactly. And then once I had them exactly the same size, you change the opacity back to 100 and then click and drag the sketch layer back next to the color layer. So now you know they are exactly the same size. So now you want to size both part of the frame measures 6.2 centimeters by 7.6 centimeters. So I knew it needed to be smaller than that. So what I did is I made a rectangle, and you can edit the size of the rectangle, and to change from inches to centimeters, you just right click on the toolbar and click to centimeters. So I know that that rectangle is the size of the interior part of the frame, and so if I print it at that size, it will be the right size. So I moved the rectangle around my image, and obviously my image is way too big, but I don't want to resize one image without resizing both of them because we've already gotten them to be identical. So you select both layers at the same time by clicking on the color layer and then Control or Command click on a Mac and click the sketch layer. And then you click Command T or Control T, or you can go to File and click Free Transform. That's going to allow you to resize both images exactly. So I can see that that is centered in the frame. So the next thing I want to do is move the sketch layer a little further away. So just click on the sketch layer by itself, move it over, and then we're going to duplicate that rectangle so that it's exactly the same size. And then move that rectangle over the sketch layer so that it too is centered within the frame. You can change the opacity on the rectangles so that they won't be quite so obvious. And now you're ready to print. So you're going to be printing the sketch layer on acetate and the color layer on photo paper. So you're going to, I think it's easiest to rename the layers so that you can tell which ones you need to hide and which ones you need to print. So I'm renaming the sketch layers and the color photo layers. So first, let's print the color photo layer. So you're going to hide the sketch rectangle and the sketch photo, and you're going to go File and Print, and then you print this on photo paper. I already printed, so I'm not going to do it. And then you're going to go over and hide the color layers and show the sketch layers. And then now you're going to go back to File, Print, make sure you put acetate into your printer, printable acetate, and then click Print, which I'm not going to do because I already printed. And that's it. So now you've got a pencil sketch on your acetate and a color photo to make your sliders. I hope you guys liked this video. Feel free to reach out to me with any questions.